When a black woman walks into one of the most luxurious five-star hotels in the country, the staff takes one look at her and decides she doesn't belong. They don't see class, they don't see grace, they just see skin. With fake smiles and barely hidden contempt, they humiliate her in front of everyone. Mock her, dismiss her, and suggest she try somewhere cheaper. She doesn't argue. She just grins and walks out. But what they don't know is who she really is. And when she walks back in, this time with the power to end careers and change lives, they realize too late that they didn't just insult a guest. They tried to break the one woman who could take everything from them. What she chooses to do instead. It doesn't just shake the walls of that hotel. It leaves the whole place gasping for breath. The afternoon sun streamed through the hotel's soaring glass windows, casting rainbow prisms across the polished marble floors. Classical piano music drifted softly through hidden speakers, mixing with the gentle splash of the lobby fountain. Everything gleamed, the brass fixtures, the crystal chandeliers, even the perfectly pressed uniforms of the staff behind the imposing front desk. Naomi Ellison paused just inside the revolving door, taking in the grandeur with quiet appreciation. Her sensible traveling shoes made no sound on the expensive flooring as she wheeled her single small suitcase toward the check-in counter. Though her clothes were simple, a navy blazer over cream slacks, they were clearly well made, chosen for comfort during travel rather than show. The two young women at the front desk exchanged quick glances as Naomi approached. The taller one stepped back slightly, while her colleague leaned forward with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Can I help you?" The words dripped with artificial sweetness. "Yes, I have a reservation for tonight," Naomi said warmly, pulling out her ID. "Under Ellison." The clerk's perfectly manicured nails clicked against the keyboard with exaggerated slowness. "I'm not seeing anything under that name. Are you quite sure you have the right hotel?" Her tone suggested Naomi had wandered in by mistake, like a child who had gotten lost. "Yes, I'm certain." Naomi's voice remained steady and clear. "I made the booking myself just yesterday." The second clerk stepped forward now, her smile just as plastic as her colleagues. "We're actually fully booked at the moment. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the Holiday Inn. It's just a few blocks away." She gestured vaguely toward the door. Naomi noticed how they both kept their hands slightly raised, as if ready to signal security at any moment. Their bodies were angled to block her path further into the lobby. "This is a very exclusive property," the first clerk added with practiced politeness. "Our guests expect a certain atmosphere. I'm sure you understand." The pause before atmosphere carried volumes of meaning. "I see." Naomi's expression remained calm, though something flickered in her dark eyes. "And what atmosphere would that be exactly?" The clerks exchanged another look, this one slightly nervous. A whispered conversation passed between them. People like her usually stay somewhere else. "Should we call Marcus? Just get her to leave quietly." Naomi heard every word. She stood perfectly still, her posture straight but relaxed. Then, slowly, a small grin spread across her face, not angry, not bitter, just knowing. Without another word, she turned her suitcase around and walked back toward the revolving door, that slight smile still in place. The bright afternoon sun warmed her face as she emerged onto the sidewalk. Behind her, quick footsteps echoed on the marble. "Ma'am, please wait." Naomi turned to find an older woman hurrying after her, grey blonde hair escaping from its neat bun. Her concierge uniform badge read, "Grace Weller." "I'm so sorry," Grace said, slightly out of breath. She thrust forward an unopened bottle of water. "Please, what happened?" "In theirs, it's not right. It's been getting worse the way certain guests are treated." Her hands trembled slightly. "We're hosting a Veterans Honor Gala next week. Big foundation donor coming. Everyone's on edge about maintaining standards, they say. But that's no excuse for—" She trailed off, looking ashamed. "Thank you, Grace." Naomi accepted the water with genuine warmth. "That's kind of you." She pulled out her phone and pressed a single number. When it connected, her voice was calm but firm. "Sarah? Yes, I'm outside. The advance visit was enlightening. No social media. This needs to be handled in person." She paused, listening. "Yes, exactly. The Veterans Honor Gala? Set up the meeting." Ending the call, Naomi squared her shoulders and looked back at the revolving door. The smile was gone now, replaced by quiet determination. She had seen what she needed to see. Now it was time for truth. Not revenge, not a viral moment of public shame, but face-to-face accountability. Behind her, Grace watched nervously as Naomi turned back toward the entrance, her head held high, every step measured and purposeful. Through the revolving door, Naomi stepped back into the hotel's grand lobby. This time a man in a crisp charcoal suit walked beside her, Thomas Chen, liaison from the hotel's corporate office. The change in the front desk staff was instant and dramatic. "Mrs. Ellison." The same clerk who had dismissed her minutes ago now straightened his tie with trembling fingers. There seems to have been a terrible misunderstanding." "Indeed." Naomi's voice was steady, neither angry nor appeasing. The lobby buzzed with nervous energy as Caroline Voss clicked across the marble floor in her designer heels, perfectly coiffed hair bouncing with each determined step. Her smile was wide but didn't reach her eyes. "Mrs. Ellison, I cannot apologize enough for this unfortunate incident." Caroline's words flowed like honey, practiced and polished. "We pride ourselves on exemplary service, and clearly we failed to meet our standards today. Please allow us to offer you our presidential suite." "The suite isn't necessary," Naomi said quietly. "What concerns me isn't the room. It's the culture that made your staff comfortable treating any guest that way." In the elevator, an older woman in a housekeeper's uniform stood quietly in the corner, hands folded. Her name tag read, Lillian Price. As they rode up, Lillian's tired eyes met Naomi's in the mirrored wall. When they reached the 4th floor, Lillian stepped out with her cart. Naomi followed, waving off Caroline's attempt to guide her to the presidential suite. "I'll take my originally booked room. Miss Price, would you mind showing me the way?" Away from the managers, Lillian's shoulders relaxed slightly. As they walked down the service hallway, she spoke in low tones. "Be careful, ma'am. Folks who point out problems here tend to become problems themselves." Her worn hands gripped her cart handle tighter. "And problems get solved quiet-like, if you understand my meaning." "I understand perfectly," Naomi replied. "And I appreciate the warning." Later that evening, Naomi sat in the hotel's lounge, reviewing documents on her tablet. A distinguished older gentleman approached her table, leaning slightly on a cane. "Mind if I join you?" Frank Malloy. His handshake was firm despite his age, his manner direct but kind. "I couldn't help overhearing what happened in the lobby earlier. Reminded me of some places I saw in '68. "Vietnam?" Naomi asked. Frank nodded. "Different war, same old ugliness. I'm here for the Veterans Honor Gala next week, hoping to see some old friends, share some memories." "The gala?" Naomi's smile was gentle. "That's actually part of why I'm here too." When Caroline returned with Thomas Chen, Naomi laid out several folders on the table between them. "My foundation isn't just funding the gala," she explained. "As Mr. Chen knows, we're in final negotiations regarding a significant leadership role in this property's future." Caroline's perfect smile flickered. "But after today," Naomi continued, "I have conditions. First, an independent audit of guest complaints and staff treatment. Second, mandatory listening sessions with employees at all levels. Third, immediate accountability measures for discriminatory behavior." She met Caroline's gaze steadily. "These aren't suggestions. They're requirements." "Of course," Caroline said smoothly, but her manicured nails dug into her palms beneath the table. "We welcome the opportunity to improve." As Naomi gathered her things and walked toward the elevator, Caroline watched her go. The general manager's practiced smile remained fixed in place, but something dark and determined flickered in her eyes. She had built her power in this hotel carefully, year by year. No one, especially not some outsider with high-minded ideas about change, was going to take it from her. The evening sun cast long shadows across Naomi's luxurious suite as she carefully unpacked her small suitcase. Each item found its place: a Bible on the nightstand, simple business clothes in the closet, comfortable shoes lined up neatly. She paused at the window, watching the city lights begin to twinkle against the darkening sky. "Lord," she whispered, settling into a plush armchair, "give me wisdom. Not anger, not revenge, just the strength to do what's right." A soft knock interrupted her prayer. Grace stood in the doorway, her hands twisting nervously at her silk scarf. "Mrs. Ellison, may I come in?" Naomi gestured to the chair across from her. "Please, and call me Naomi." Grace perched on the edge of the seat, her voice barely above a whisper. "What happened to you today?" "It happens all the time. Caroline has rules, unwritten ones. If a guest doesn't look right, sound right, or spend enough..." She shook her head. "The staff knows who to welcome and who to turn away, and nobody speaks up because they can't afford to lose their jobs." "How long have you worked here, Grace?" 23 years. My husband, he was a veteran too. He used to say sometimes the bravest thing is just showing up every day." Naomi reached for her purse and pulled out a small notebook. "I need your help, Grace. Be my eyes. Write down everything you see, the good and the bad. Times, dates, exactly what happened." Grace's shoulders straightened slightly. "I can do that." Later, in the hotel's elegant lounge, Naomi chose a table in plain view rather than one of the secluded booths. She ordered chamomile tea and watched the room, how the servers moved, which guests got immediate attention, which ones waited. "Mind if I join you?" Gentle voice broke through her observations. Frank Malloy stood beside her table, his silver hair neatly combed, wearing a Vietnam veteran's cap. "Please do." Naomi smiled warmly. Frank settled into the chair, his movements careful but dignified. "I couldn't help noticing how you handled things earlier. Reminded me of my platoon sergeant, calm under fire, but steel in his spine." High praise coming from a veteran. "We're having a small breakfast meeting tomorrow. Just a few of us old-timers getting ready for the gala. Would you join us 7 a.m. in the garden room?" "I'd be honored." As they chatted, Naomi noticed how other guests treated Frank, with respect, but also that particular distance reserved for those who remind us of uncomfortable truths. He seemed used to it, wearing their awkwardness like a familiar coat. Walking back toward the elevators, Naomi heard sharp voices from the service corridor. She slowed her steps. "Unacceptable!" Caroline's voice cracked like a whip. "How many times do I have to tell you about proper folding technique? Are you stupid?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Voss." Lillian's voice trembled. "My arthritis today. I don't want excuses. If you can't maintain our standards, perhaps it's time to consider retirement." Naomi glimpsed Lillian through the partially open door, shoulders hunched, hands shaking as she refolded towels. The woman's eyes were tired, so tired, but they held on to dignity like a lifeline. Caroline's heels clicked away down the corridor. Lillian kept folding, her movements careful despite the pain in her joints. Each towel was a small act of defiance, perfectly creased despite the tears she wouldn't let fall. Back in her suite, Naomi opened her notebook. Under the day's date, she wrote Lillian Price and underlined it twice. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, but tonight she had seen enough. The hotel's beauty was built on broken spirits, and that would end. She looked at her watch, 11:30 p.m. In just a few hours, the real work would begin. The morning sun cast long shadows through the narrow windows of the service corridor as Naomi met Grace near the staff entrance. The gleaming lobby felt worlds away from these plain concrete walls and fluorescent lights. "Show me where the real work happens," Naomi said softly. Grace nodded, leading her through a maze of back hallways. "Most guests never see this side," she explained, pushing open a heavy door. "This is where everything that makes the hotel run actually happens." The laundry room hummed with industrial washers and dryers. The air was thick with heat and the sharp smell of bleach. 3 workers sorted endless piles of white linens, their movements quick and practiced. In a corner, Lillian stood at a folding table, her hands moving steadily over fresh towels. Naomi approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Good morning," Naomi said warmly. "I'm Naomi. Would you mind if I helped?" Lillian's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. Naomi picked up a warm towel and began folding, matching Lillian's careful technique. "You don't have to do that, ma'am," Lillian said, quietly. "I want to," Naomi replied. "And please, just Naomi is fine. I'd love to hear about your work here if you're willing to share." As they folded together, Lillian's story emerged in gentle pieces. 28 years at the hotel. A husband lost to cancer 5 years ago. Knees that ached from decades of pushing heavy carts. "Some days are harder than others," Lillian admitted, smoothing a crease with practiced hands. "But the work itself isn't what hurts. It's how they look through you like you're just part of the furniture." A young housekeeper hurried past, pausing just long enough to whisper, "Ms. Price, be careful what you say." Her eyes darted nervously to the door before she rushed away. Lillian's shoulders slumped. "See, they teach the new ones quick. Keep quiet, keep your head down, or else." What happened in the lobby yesterday? Naomi said carefully. Is that common? Only difference was someone important saw it this time. Lillian's voice was barely above a whisper. Usually there's no one to witness. They moved to the break room, a cramped space with a coffee maker that had seen better days. Lillian glanced around before reaching into her locker, pulling out a worn binder wrapped in a faded tea towel. I started writing things down years ago, she explained, placing it carefully on the table. Missing tips that never made it to the right people. Write-ups for things we didn't do wrong. Names of guests they turned away at the desk, always with some excuse about being fully booked when we had empty rooms. Naomi opened the binder, scanning neat handwriting that documented dates, times, and details. Years of small cruelties and larger injustices, recorded in patient, painful detail. I can't promise everything will change overnight, Naomi said honestly. But I can promise that these truths won't stay hidden, and I will do everything in my power to protect the people who speak up. Grace stepped into the break room. I can set up the small conference room for a staff listening session before lunch, she offered. Word's already spreading that people want to talk. Lillian's hands trembled as she rewrapped the binder. They'll come for you, she whispered, but handed the records to Naomi anyway. They always do. The morning sun streamed through the glass-walled conference room, casting long shadows across the polished table. Naomi sat with perfect posture, her hands folded calmly in front of her. Across the table, Caroline Voss wore her most practiced smile, while the corporate liaison, Mr. Peterson, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. We're simply thrilled to have you here, Caroline said, her voice dripping with honey. The Ellison Foundation's reputation for excellence matches our own high standards perfectly. Naomi nodded once, then reached into her modest leather briefcase. Speaking of standards, she said quietly, placing Lillian's worn binder on the table. The soft thud seemed to echo in the suddenly silent room. Caroline's smile flickered. What's this? This is a record of guest complaints, tip discrepancies, and incident reports spanning the last 5 years. Naomi opened the binder, revealing neat columns of dates and detailed notes. I'd like to start with page 47. Mr. Peterson leaned forward, his forehead creasing. Ms. Ellison, perhaps we could discuss the upcoming Veterans Honor Gala first? The press materials... The press will absolutely be interested in this hotel, Naomi interrupted smoothly. The question is which story they'll tell. Will it be about positive change, or about patterns we chose to ignore? She pulled out a typed document and slid it across the table. Here are my requirements. First, an independent audit of all guest complaints and payroll records, starting today. Second, immediate restoration of the original tip distribution policy. Third, mandatory respect and inclusion training. Not next quarter, not next month. Today. Caroline's laugh was brittle. Surely you understand that implementing changes of this magnitude takes time. Yesterday in the lobby, Naomi said, her voice gentle but firm, your staff told me, and I quote, people like you usually stay somewhere else. That was at 2:15 p.m. At 2:17, I was informed you were fully booked, despite having multiple suites available. Grace Weller recorded 6 similar incidents just yesterday afternoon. The room grew very still. Caroline's smile had vanished completely. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. Ms. Ellison, we deeply regret any misunderstanding. This isn't about regret, Naomi said. This is about change, real change, not press releases. My foundation's name and reputation will be tied to whatever happens in this building. I need to know, see. Will that association make us proud or make us ashamed? She opened her tablet and pulled up a calendar. I've already contacted Harrison and associates to conduct the audit. They can begin at noon. The respect training team is on standby. Mr. Peterson, I'll need your signature here to authorize their immediate access. The liaison looked at Caroline, then back at Naomi. Slowly, he reached for the pen. Caroline stood abruptly. I should brief the department heads. Her heels clicked sharply as she left the room. 20 minutes later, Grace stood organizing papers at the concierge desk when a shadow fell across her work. She looked up to find Caroline standing too close, voice pitched low and dangerous. You've worked here a long time, Grace, Caroline murmured. Long enough to know that loyalty matters. Loyal employees get promotions, better schedules, holiday bonuses. But people who betray trust? She smiled, all teeth. Well, they tend to have unfortunate performance reviews, Scheduling conflicts, reduced hours. Do you understand? Grace's hands trembled slightly as she clutched her notebook, but she met Caroline's eyes and stepped back. Without a word, she turned and walked away, her spine straight despite her fear. At her desk, she opened her notebook and continued writing, recording the threat word for word. From across the vast lobby, Naomi watched the interaction, noting Grace's shaken expression and Caroline's predatory stance. She made a mental note to ensure Grace had documentation and protection for her brave choice to stand as a witness. This wasn't just about changing policies anymore. It was about protecting the people willing to risk everything for truth. The morning sun had risen higher now, flooding the lobby with light that caught every crystal in the chandeliers. Naomi saw past the sparkle to the shadows beneath, where people like Lillian and Grace carried the weight of silence. Today, that silence would begin to break. The modest meeting room felt different from the hotel's usual spaces. No gleaming marble or crystal chandeliers here, just comfortable chairs arranged in a circle, the aroma of fresh coffee, and a plate of simple pastries on a side table. Natural light filtered through Venetian blinds, creating warm stripes across the carpet. Naomi sat with perfect posture, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She wore a simple navy dress that spoke of quiet confidence rather than power. As hotel staff members trickled in, some eager, others hesitant, she greeted each one by name, thanks to Grace's careful introductions earlier. "Before we begin," Naomi said once everyone was settled, "I'd like to share something with you." Her voice carried warmth and authority without force. "I grew up in a small house in Georgia. My daddy worked 2 jobs. My mama cleaned houses. We didn't have much, but we had dignity." She paused, letting her words settle. "I remember the first time I tried to open a business account at a fancy bank. The manager wouldn't even look at my paperwork, just pointed me toward the exit." A few staff members shifted uncomfortably. "But my mama taught me something powerful. When people try to shame you, that shame belongs to them, not you." Naomi leaned forward slightly. "Today, we're here to speak truth, and I want to make one thing absolutely clear. No one will face punishment for honest words in this room. You have my personal guarantee." Lillian sat with her hands twisted in her lap, her grey-streaked hair neat under her uniform cap. When Naomi nodded encouragingly, she took a shaky breath. "I've worked here 17 years, Lillian began, her voice barely above a whisper. "At first, I was so proud to be here. But then," she stopped, swallowed hard. "The tips started disappearing. Guest gratuities meant for housekeeping. Gone. When we asked, they said it was policy changes." As Lillian continued speaking, her voice grew stronger. "They write us up for things we didn't do. Last month, Mrs. Henderson, a guest on the 6th floor, left me a thank you note and a $20 tip. Next day, I'm called to the office. They said her bracelet was missing." Her eyes grew wet. "I've never stolen anything in my life, but they made me feel so small." Around the circle, reactions varied. A young bellman named Marcus hung his head, whispering, "I'm sorry, Miss Lillian. We all knew, but we were scared to speak up." Others, particularly those closer to management, sat rigid and stone-faced. "Thank you, Lillian," Naomi said softly. "Your courage honors us all." She turned to address the whole group. "Starting today, 2 things are changing. First, we're establishing a direct line to corporate compliance. Any staff member can report concerns confidentially without fear of retaliation." She let that sink in before continuing. "Second, I'm announcing the creation of Hope Scholarship Program. This will provide educational funding for hotel employees, their families, and veterans' families in our community. Applications open right after the Veterans Honor Gala." The tension in the room shifted. Several people sat straighter, hope replacing fear in their expressions. Even some of the stiffer staff members showed signs of softening. Later that afternoon, Naomi found Frank in the hotel lounge. He sat in a leather armchair, reading glasses perched on his nose as he studied a newspaper. His military bearing was evident even in repose. "Mr. Malloy," she said, taking the chair opposite him, "I have a favor to ask." Frank folded his paper carefully. "After watching you handle things today, ma'am, I'd say I'm the one who owes you a favor." Naomi smiled. "The Veterans Honor Gala needs a speaker who understands what real service means. Someone who can talk about dignity, duty, and doing what's right even when it's hard. You're not just talking about military service anymore, are you?" Frank's eyes twinkled. The principles are the same, Naomi replied. Standing tall when others want you to bend. Protecting those who can't protect themselves. Frank nodded slowly. I'd be honored, though I suspect some folks won't like what I have to say about real courage. Truth has that effect sometimes, Naomi agreed. The sun was setting when Naomi returned to her suite, painting the corridor in deep orange and purple shadows. She noticed it immediately. A white envelope on the floor slipped under her door while she was out. The paper was hotel stationery, but the message was typed, not handwritten. Leave this hotel alone, or you'll regret it. Naomi held the note to the light, then carefully placed it in her document folder. The threat didn't shake her calm. It only proved how desperately this place needed to change. The hotel restaurant hummed with quiet conversation as sunset painted the tall windows in shades of amber and gold. Naomi settled into her chair near the swinging service door, where dishes clattered and servers rushed past. She knew exactly why Caroline had chosen this spot for her during the Veterans Honor Gala planning dinner. Around the table sat 5 veterans and 3 widows, their silver hair catching the evening light. Frank Malloy nodded at Naomi from his seat across the table, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. The acoustics aren't great here, he said, gesturing to the service door. Would you like to switch seats, Miss Ellison? I'm just fine, thank you, Naomi replied with a warm smile. I spent plenty of nights washing dishes in places like this to pay for college. The sound reminds me where I started. The young server, Tommy, appeared at Naomi's elbow, looking flustered. I'm so sorry, ma'am. Your entree will be delayed. There was a mix-up in the kitchen. From her perch at the head of the table, Caroline's lips curved in a satisfied smile. No problem at all, Tommy, Naomi said, touching his arm gently. How's your mother doing? I heard you mention earlier she's been under the weather. Tommy's tense shoulders relaxed. She's better, thanks for asking. The medicine is really helping. I'm glad to hear that. Please tell her I said hello. The simple exchange transformed the atmosphere. The veterans and widows who had been watching carefully now leaned in, including Tommy in their conversation. Soon he was sharing stories about his grandmother's service as a nurse in Korea. When Tommy finally brought Naomi's meal, a full 30 minutes after everyone else had been served, she thanked him like it was right on time. The delayed dinner had become a chance for connection instead of conflict. As the group finished their coffee and dessert, Frank caught Naomi's eye. You know, he said quietly, in the service, we learn who we are when we're treated unfairly. Some folks let it make them bitter. Others like you let it make them better. Naomi squeezed his weathered hand. Thank you for your service, Frank. Both then and now. After dinner, as the group dispersed, Grace appeared at Naomi's side near the concierge desk. Her face was drawn with worry. Ms. Ellison, could I speak with you privately? They moved to a quiet corner where potted palms provided cover. Grace's hands twisted together as she spoke. Something's not right with the security system, she whispered. The camera in the hallway near the luxury suites. It keeps going down at strange times. I checked the maintenance logs, but they look wrong, like someone's been changing the entries. Naomi's expression remained calm, but her mind raced. How long has this been happening? Just the past few days since you arrived. Grace glanced over her shoulder. I've worked here 15 years. I know what normal technical issues look like. This isn't normal. I need you to do something for me, Grace, Naomi said. Take photos of those logs with your phone. Write down names, dates, times, everything you notice that seems off. But don't confront Caroline or anyone else about it. You think she's planning something? I think evidence matters, and I think you need to stay safe. Grace nodded and hurried back to her desk. Naomi pulled out her phone and typed a message to the corporate liaison. I need full security access by morning. From the second-floor balcony overlooking the lobby, Caroline watched the exchange. A satisfied smile played across her face, like a cat watching a mouse walk willingly toward a trap. Naomi felt the weight of that gaze but didn't look up. She'd faced worse than Caroline Voss in her lifetime, much worse, and she'd learned that sometimes the best response to a trap was to spring it on purpose, but only after you'd gathered enough truth to light up all the dark corners. The lobby's crystal chandeliers threw rainbow patterns across the marble floor as Naomi headed toward the elevator. Behind her, Tommy's voice rang out clear and warm. Good night, Ms. Ellison. Thank you for asking about my mom. It was the small moments of kindness, Naomi knew, that often revealed the biggest truths about a person's character. And right now, every truth mattered. The next morning's sun hadn't yet touched the hotel's upper floors when Naomi and Grace made their way to the cramped security office in the basement. The room smelled of coffee and electronics, with monitors showing different parts of the hotel in grainy black and white. Mike Chen, the head of security, shifted uncomfortably in his chair while Tom from IT hovered near a computer terminal. Both men kept glancing at the door as if expecting trouble. "We need the camera logs for the past 3 months, Naomi said, her voice calm but firm, and the keycard access records for the luxury suites. Before either man could respond, clicking heels announced Caroline's arrival. She swept in wearing a crisp navy suit, her smile sharp as glass. "Security protocols are strictly internal," Caroline announced. "I'm sure you understand, Mrs. Ellison." Naomi pulled out her phone and showed an email from the corporate liaison. "Actually, I have full authorization. Shall we begin?" Grace's hands trembled slightly as she opened her notebook. Naomi gave her a reassuring nod. "Show us the maintenance logs first," Naomi requested. Tom typed quickly, bringing up spreadsheets. Grace leaned forward, pointing to specific dates. "Here, the camera outages I noticed." They scrolled through weeks of records. A pattern emerged like thread through fabric. Every few days, cameras near certain luxury suites would go dark for hours. The maintenance notes were identical, copied and pasted. "Interesting," Naomi said softly. "Tom, can you pull up the payroll records for the housekeeping department?" Caroline's smile tightened. "That's confidential employee information, which I'm authorized to review," Naomi finished. She turned to Grace. "Show me what you found about the tip pools." Grace's notebook contained careful notes about guest tips that never reached staff. The payroll files confirmed it. Deductions that violated policy, missing amounts that should have gone to housekeeping. Caroline's phone buzzed. She stepped into the hallway, her heels striking the floor like angry punctuation marks. During a quiet moment when Tom stepped away to retrieve more records, Mike, the security chief, spoke barely above a whisper. "Mrs. Ellison, there's something else. The camera failures, their manual overrides, someone with high-level access is turning them off on purpose." Naomi nodded slowly. "Thank you for your honesty, Mike. Would you be willing to put that in writing?" Later, in the employee break room, Naomi found Lillian sitting alone, stirring a cup of coffee that had gone cold. The older woman's shoulders were curved with worry. "It's happening again, isn't it?" Lillian asked. "Like the vase last year, and Mrs. Henderson's bracelet before that." "Tell me about those incidents," Naomi said gently, sliding into the chair across from her. Lillian's voice was quiet but steady. "The vase. It was knocked over by a guest's child. I saw it happen, but Caroline said I must have done it while dusting." She took a shaky breath. "The bracelet disappeared while I was cleaning Mrs. Henderson's suite. They found it later in the hotel shop's lost and found, but by then, the damage was done. Caroline knows I can't afford a lawyer. I'm safe to blame." "Not anymore," Naomi said firmly. She pulled out a leather portfolio and opened it. "Look at what we found this morning. Everything is documented now. The camera tampering, the missing tips, the pattern of false accusations. You're not alone anymore, Lillian." Tears welled in Lillian's eyes. "I've worked here 23 years. It's not just about the money, it's my dignity." "I know." Naomi reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "The Veterans Honor Gala isn't just going to be a celebration. It's going to be the day everything changes. We're going to make this right." In her private office, Caroline held her phone tight enough to whiten her knuckles. "If she wants a turning point," she said, her voice cold and low, "we'll give her one." The afternoon sunlight streamed through the ballroom's tall windows, casting warm rectangles across the polished floor. Round tables dotted the space, each one a perfect mix of pressed uniforms and casual clothes, name tags and work badges, veterans and hotel staff sharing coffee and conversation. Naomi stood near the entrance, greeting people with genuine warmth. "Please, sit anywhere you'd like," she said to a young bellhop who hesitated at the doorway. "Today we're all just people sharing breakfast." Frank Malloy sat at a central table, his weathered hands wrapped around a coffee mug. "Back in '68, he was saying to a captivated group, "we learned real quick that rank doesn't matter when you're sharing a foxhole. What matters is the person next to you doing their best. Several tables away, Lillian perched uncertainly on her chair's edge, as if expecting to be called away for work at any moment. A young receptionist, the same one who had watched her being scolded days ago, approached with a fresh pot of coffee. "Can I top that up for you, Ms. Price?" she asked softly. "You deserve to relax and enjoy your breakfast." Lillian's eyes widened slightly at being addressed so formally. "Thank you, dear," she managed, holding out her cup. Grace moved between the tables with her usual grace, though her eyes shone with unshed tears as she watched barriers slowly dissolving. A veteran's widow shared pictures of her grandchildren with a housekeeper. A maintenance man discovered he had served at the same base as one of the elderly veterans. Naomi stepped to the small podium, tapping her glass gently. The room quieted. "Before we continue our morning," she said, "I'd like us all to stand for a moment, not of silence, but of gratitude. Gratitude for service, whether it was given on foreign soil or right here in these halls." She turned toward Lillian. "Ms. Lillian Price has served this hotel and its guests for 23 years with dignity and care. Would you all join me in thanking her?" The applause started, slowly, then swelled. Lillian pressed a hand to her mouth, tears spilling over. The young cook, who had often worked late shifts alongside her, reached over to squeeze her shoulder. "This is what real standards look like," Naomi continued. "Not polished marble or crystal chandeliers, but human beings treating each other with respect." Meanwhile, 12 floors above the warmth of the ballroom, Caroline Voss paced her office like a caged tiger. The sound of laughter drifted up through the atrium, making her jaw clench. "She's destroying everything we've built," Caroline snapped, as Dale Mercer, the broad-shouldered head of security, stood stiffly by her desk. "All this emotion. These people are staff, not family. They're here to work, not hold hands and share feelings." Dale shifted uncomfortably. "The veterans seem to appreciate—" "The veterans will be gone in 2 days," Caroline cut him off. "But this woman is trying to permanently change how we operate. Corporate is watching. If they start believing her way is better—" She let the threat hang unfinished. Moving to her window, Caroline stared down at the arriving breakfast guests. "We need something decisive, something that will make corporate question her judgment and pull back their support before the gala ends." Dale's face remained carefully neutral. "What exactly are you suggesting, ma'am?" Caroline turned, her smile cold and precise. "Create an incident. Something concerning enough to require official reports. Something that shows letting outsiders interfere with our system leads to problems." "That could be risky," Dale said slowly. "Riskier than losing your position when she restructures everything?" Caroline's voice hardened. "Remember who approved your last 3 raises, Dale. Remember who keeps certain overtime discrepancies from reaching payroll." Dale's shoulders slumped slightly. He nodded once, sharply. Caroline opened her desk drawer and removed a small velvet pouch. "Make it happen tonight. Show her that some people simply don't belong in places like this, no matter how much money they have." Dale took the pouch, its weight settling in his palm like a stone. Walking to the security office, he unlocked a drawer with his master keycard. The small pouch disappeared inside with a soft thump. "Tonight," Caroline said from the doorway, making him start, "she learns her place." The morning sun streamed through the hotel's tall windows, casting golden light across the bustling lobby. Fresh flowers arrived in buckets, roses, lilies, and hydrangeas in soft whites and deep blues. The scent of spring filled the air as staff members arranged centerpieces with careful hands. In the grand ballroom, workers aligned chairs in perfect rows, measuring the spaces between them with practiced precision. At the gleaming black piano, an older gentleman in a neat suit played gentle scales, testing the acoustics of the space. The notes floated upward, mingling with the quiet buzz of preparation. Outside the staff locker room, Lillian Price stood very still as Grace helped adjust her new uniform, a tailored navy suit with polished brass buttons. The fabric was crisp and elegant, worlds away from her usual cleaning clothes. "I hardly recognize myself," Lillian whispered, touching the lapel with trembling fingers. "That's because you finally look like what you've always been, someone worthy of respect," Grace said, smoothing the shoulders. Lillian blinked back tears, straightening her spine. For the first time in years, she felt seen. In a quiet corner of the mezzanine, Naomi sat, alone with her speech notes. Her voice was soft but clear as she practiced. Service isn't just about uniforms or medals. Sometimes it's about quiet courage, about doing what's right when no one is watching. She paused her rehearsal when she spotted Frank Malloy at a small table nearby. The veteran sat with intense focus, carefully polishing his service pins with a soft cloth. His weathered hands shook slightly as he worked, but his eyes were bright with pride. "Need any help with those, Frank?" Naomi asked gently. He smiled up at her. "No, ma'am. Been doing this same ritual for 50 years. Each pin has its own story." The peaceful morning shifted when a commotion erupted at the front desk. Marjorie Whittaker swept in trailing designer luggage and complaints. "I simply cannot believe the changes in this hotel," she announced loudly, her jewelry clinking as she gestured. "The standards have completely slipped. I saw certain people just wandering around the lobby as if they belonged here." Caroline materialized instantly, her professional smile firmly in place. "Mrs. Whittaker, I assure you we maintain the highest standards." "Well, you could have fooled me," Marjorie sniffed. "In my day, people knew their place." Naomi, stepping out of the elevator nearby, caught every word. For a moment, she stood very still, feeling the familiar weight of such casual cruelty. Then she straightened her shoulders, walked directly to the front desk, and gave Marjorie a warm smile. "Welcome to our hotel," she said clearly. "I hope you'll join us for the Veterans Honor Gala this evening. We're celebrating service, sacrifice, and dignity." With a small nod, she turned and walked away, leaving Marjorie sputtering. Grace caught up with Naomi near the conference rooms, clutching her ever-present notebook. "More camera problems last night," she whispered. "Third floor near the luxury suites, and the maintenance logs have been edited again. Different handwriting on the times." Naomi nodded calmly. "Keep everything, Grace. Every note, every changed record. Truth likes paperwork." The afternoon rehearsal brought everyone together in the ballroom. Tables gleamed with fresh linens and silver. The piano music swelled and faded, setting the mood. Naomi found Frank adjusting his tie near the podium. "Would you consider opening the gala?" she asked. "Just a few words about honor and kindness. What those really mean, from someone who knows." Frank's eyes grew wet. "Yes, ma'am," he said softly. "It would be my privilege to remind folks what real service looks like." Behind the heavy curtains at the back of the ballroom, Caroline drew Dale into the shadows. Her voice was barely a whisper, but her eyes were hard as steel. "Now," she said, the word sharp as a blade. The Veterans Honor Gala transformed the hotel's grand ballroom into something almost sacred. Crystal chandeliers glowed softly overhead, their light catching on rows of small American flags placed carefully at each table. White tablecloths draped to the floor, silverware gleamed, and fresh flowers filled crystal vases. The room buzzed with quiet dignity as older couples, dressed in their finest, found their seats. Frank Malloy stood at the podium, his weathered hand steady on its edges. His service pins caught the light as he began to speak, his voice gentle but firm. "Back in Vietnam, I carried my best friend Tommy for 3 miles after he got hit," Frank said. "Not because I was strong, I was terrified, but sometimes being gentle takes more courage than being tough. Tommy taught me that real strength isn't about power. It's about helping others stand when they can't stand alone." Tears glistened in many eyes as Frank finished. Naomi rose from her seat, touching his shoulder as they passed. Her simple navy dress and pearl necklace reflected her usual modest elegance as she took the podium. "Tonight isn't just about honoring service," Naomi began. "It's about creating something new. Starting tomorrow, we're launching 3 programs: full college scholarships for hotel employees and veterans' families, an employee emergency support fund, and new training that will help this beautiful hotel finally match its beauty with its heart." Applause rippled through the room. Naomi gestured to the side of the stage. "But first, I'd like to honor someone special. Lillian Price, would you join me?" Lillian froze in her spot near the service door, eyes wide. Grace gently nudged her forward. As Lillian walked slowly to the stage, her pressed uniform perfectly neat, her back straight despite her nerves. "For 23 years, Naomi said, Lillian has been the backbone of this hotel. Her dedication, her dignity, and her grace under pressure represent the very best of service." A young server brought forward a bouquet of roses. As Lillian accepted them, her hands trembling, the room rose in a standing ovation. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks. "Thank you," Lillian whispered into the microphone. "I never thought—" The moment felt pure, healing, until a shrill voice cut through the applause. "My jewelry!" Marjorie Whittaker's cry echoed from the lobby. "Someone's been in my suite!" The celebration shattered. Guests turned in their chairs as Marjorie burst into the ballroom, Dale and 2 security guards right behind her. Her face was red with either panic or anger, maybe both. "My diamond necklace and earrings," she announced. "Worth over $50,000, gone." Dale stepped forward, his voice carrying. "We have security footage of someone entering the suite corridor during unauthorized hours." His eyes locked onto Lillian, still holding her roses on stage. Mrs. Price was seen in that area. Lillian's bouquet slipped from her fingers. "No," she said, "I would never—" Phones appeared in guests' hands. Whispers spread like fire. The security guards moved toward the stage as Lillian backed away, her hands shaking violently now. "I've worked here 23 years, she pleaded. "I don't even have access to—" But Dale was already climbing the stage steps, reaching for her arm. Before he could touch her, Naomi stepped between them. Her voice cut through the chaos, calm but filled with authority. "Stop," she commanded. Not one more step. The security office felt like a cage. Under stark fluorescent lights that made everyone look sickly, Lillian sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, her new uniform, the one that had made her so proud just hours ago, now feeling like a costume that didn't belong to her. "Just tell us where you put Mrs. Whittaker's jewelry, and this can all go away quietly," Dale said, his voice carrying a false kindness that made Naomi's jaw tighten. She stood firmly in the doorway, refusing to let them isolate Lillian. Caroline paced behind Dale's desk, her heels clicking against the linoleum. "We have to think about the hotel's reputation. I'm calling the police. It's procedure." "You'll do no such thing," Naomi said, her voice steady but firm. "Not without a lawyer present. And I want to see every keycard record for that floor." Dale spread his hands in a helpless gesture. "The cameras were down in that section. Technical issue. There's no way to quickly clear—" "How convenient," Naomi cut in. Through the glass partition, they could see the lobby was still in chaos from the gala. Guests whispered in clusters, phones out, some filming the drama unfolding. Naomi noticed Frank standing near the front desk, his face ashen. As she watched, he grabbed suddenly at his chest, stumbling. "Frank!" she called out. But the security office door muffled her voice. The veteran's knees buckled. 2 younger men caught him before he hit the marble floor. Someone shouted for help, and the whispers turned to gasps. "Call an ambulance," Naomi commanded, her voice cutting through the noise. She wanted desperately to go to Frank, but she couldn't leave Lillian alone with Caroline and Dale. Lillian's shoulders shook with silent sobs. "I didn't take anything. I swear on my husband's grave, I didn't—" "Shh," Naomi soothed, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know. We're going to prove it." Her phone buzzed. The corporate liaison. She stepped just outside the door to take it, keeping one eye on Lillian through the glass. "This is very concerning," the liaison said, his voice tight. "The board is nervous. If this becomes a scandal, we may need to pause the ownership transition and foundation partnership." Naomi closed her eyes briefly. Everything she'd worked for, the chance to transform this place, to bring real change, balanced on a razor's edge. And more importantly, Lillian's whole life hung in the balance. One false accusation could destroy decades of honest work. "I understand," she said simply, and ended the call. She watched paramedics arrive for Frank, their efficiency cutting a path through the onlookers. His face was grey, but he managed to catch her eye and give a weak nod as they loaded him onto the stretcher. The message was clear. Don't give up. Naomi needed a moment, just one moment to breathe and think. She found herself in the hotel's small chapel, empty at this late hour. The stained glass windows were dark, but a few candles flickered on the altar. She sank into a pew, bowed her head, and let out a shaky breath. "Lord," she whispered, "give me the strength to fight this with truth, not anger. Show me the way to justice that heals instead of wounds, and please, please watch over Frank and Lillian." A soft knock interrupted her prayer. Grace slipped in, clutching her ever-present notebook and phone. Her hands trembled as she sat beside Naomi. "I found something," Grace whispered, though they were alone. She pulled up an email on her phone, a maintenance schedule showing planned camera outages. "Look at the timing. The cameras didn't just happen to fail. It was scheduled, and here, she flipped to another screenshot showing keycard access logs. Security staff entered that floor right before Mrs. Whitaker reported the theft. Naomi studied the evidence, her expression hardening into steel determination. The trap had been clumsy, rushed. They'd left traces. Now she had proof. "Grace," she said quietly, "I need you to forward these to my private email. Then delete them from your phone." "And Grace? Thank you for being brave." The older woman's eyes welled with tears. Someone has to stand for what's right. The sky outside was still dark when Naomi met Grace and Jennifer Torres, the corporate compliance attorney, in a small office tucked away from the main hotel corridors. Steam rose from their untouched coffee cups as they spread printed logs across the desk under harsh fluorescent lights. "Show me everything," Jennifer said, adjusting her reading glasses. "Start with the camera schedules." Grace's hands trembled slightly as she opened her notebook. The outages weren't random. "Look here." She pointed to a maintenance calendar. They scheduled the camera shutdown for exactly when Mrs. Whitaker reported her jewelry missing. Jennifer nodded, making careful notes. "And the keycard data?" Naomi pulled up the server backups on her laptop. "Dale's security badge accessed that floor 3 times yesterday. Once before the gala, once during, and once right after the jewelry was reported missing." The attorney leaned forward, frowning at the timestamp. "That's not standard patrol timing." They worked methodically through the evidence. Fragments of deleted security footage, badge swipe records, and maintenance logs that didn't match the official story. With each piece, the truth became clearer. "Look at this," Grace whispered, pulling up an email thread. "Caroline specifically requested the camera maintenance during the gala, said it couldn't wait until morning." Jennifer's pen scratched across her legal pad. "That's enough for a search. I'll call the board representatives now." Within an hour, they stood in the security office with 2 board members and the corporate liaison. Dale wasn't there. He'd called in sick the moment questions started. "Open the drawers," Jennifer directed, "all of them." The liaison used his master key. In the 3rd drawer down behind some paperwork sat a small velvet pouch. Jennifer carefully lifted it out, documenting everything with her phone camera. "These are Mrs. Whitaker's missing pieces," the liaison confirmed, face tight with anger. Naomi's voice was steady but firm. "I want Lillian released, now." They walked to the holding room, where Lillian had spent a sleepless night. When the door opened, she looked small and crumpled, her uniform wrinkled, her eyes red from crying. "Come here," Naomi said softly, opening her arms. Lillian stumbled forward into Naomi's embrace. "I didn't take anything," she whispered. "I swear I didn't." "We know," Naomi said, holding her tight. "We found the truth. You're not going to be anyone's scapegoat ever again." The corporate board members gathered in a conference room, faces grave as Jennifer laid out the evidence. Photos of the planted jewelry, keycard records, emails about the camera maintenance, years of complaint records from Lillian's binder showing a pattern of discrimination and retaliation. "This goes beyond one incident," Naomi said. "This is about systematic abuse of power." The board chairman nodded slowly. "We'll take immediate action. Caroline Voss will be terminated and Dale's security contract is void, but—" he hesitated. "The press is already asking questions. Someone tipped them off about a disturbance at the gala." Just then, Grace hurried in with her tablet. "You need to see this." She pulled up a local news website where a new story was breaking. "Chaos at luxury hotel's veterans event. Sources claim activist stirred tension." Naomi recognized Caroline's careful phrasing in the anonymous quotes. Even now, she was trying to control the narrative. "We have the truth," Naomi said firmly. "And unlike rumors, the truth comes with paperwork." The board members exchanged looks. The chairman straightened his tie. "What do you need from us?" "Full transparency," Naomi answered. "We show exactly what happened here. Not to shame anyone, but to make sure it never happens again." Jennifer pulled out fresh documents. "I've drafted statements for immediate release. We need to get ahead of this story." As they worked through response plans, Naomi felt a deep weariness, not from defeat, but from knowing how much work real change required. She looked through the conference room window where Lillian sat with Grace, sipping tea with shaking hands but sitting straighter now, dignity returning to her shoulders. The afternoon sun streamed through the ballroom's tall windows, casting long shadows across the gathered crowd. Hotel staff members stood in clusters, their nervous whispers filling the elegant space. Veterans from the committee sat in chairs near the front, their faces solemn. Frank Malloy, still pale from his hospital stay but insistent on attending, sat closest to the podium. Naomi Ellison stood at the center of the room, her posture straight and calm. She wore a simple navy dress, her silver hair caught in soft coils at the nape of her neck. The corporate liaison and a stern-faced attorney flanked her, holding folders thick with evidence. "I've called this meeting," Naomi began, her voice warm but firm, "because truth matters more than image. What happened here wasn't just about one incident or one person. It was about who we choose to be when no one's watching." Caroline Voss stood near the back wall, arms crossed, her usual polished smile replaced by tight lips and narrowed eyes. Dale Mercer, the head of security, shifted uncomfortably beside her. The compliance attorney stepped forward, opening his folder. "Our investigation revealed systematic discrimination and misconduct." He clicked through slides showing security logs, maintenance schedules, and time-stamped photos. "The jewelry incident was staged. We have evidence of a pre-planned camera outage and unauthorized keycard access by security personnel. The missing items were recovered from a locked drawer in the security office." A gasp rippled through the room. Two corporate security officers moved quietly to stand near Dale. "Mr. Mercer," the corporate liaison said, "please surrender your credentials and exit the building. You'll be contacted by our legal team." Dale's face drained of color as he was escorted out. Caroline's perfectly manicured nails dug into her arms. Naomi waited for the whispers to settle. "But this goes deeper than one incident. We found evidence of wage theft through manipulated tip pools, guest complaints buried or ignored based on race or appearance, staff members written up or scheduled for punishment shifts when they spoke up." She looked directly at Caroline. "Ms. Voss, the board has reviewed the evidence. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately." Caroline stepped forward, voice sharp. "You can't—" "It's done," the corporate liaison cut in. "Please collect your personal items and leave." As Caroline was escorted out, her heels clicking against the marble floor, Naomi turned back to the staff. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for healing. Starting today, we implement full changes, mandatory respect training, restored tip policies, and a protected reporting system for any concerns. We're also offering counseling support for anyone who needs to process what they've experienced here." Lillian Price sat in the front row, tears sliding down her cheeks. Grace stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder. Frank Malloy raised his hand, and Naomi nodded. He pushed himself up slowly, leaning on his cane. "Mind if I say something?" "Of course," Naomi said softly. Frank's voice was quiet, but carried across the silent room. "In Vietnam, I learned something about honor. Real honor isn't about protecting your pride or your power. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. What I saw in this hotel wasn't honor, but what I'm seeing right now, this is what honor looks like." Naomi smiled, then turned to Lillian. "Speaking of honor, Mrs. Price, would you join me up here?" Lillian walked forward, her steps hesitant, but her head high. "Everyone, meet our new training and guest care lead," Naomi announced. "Mrs. Price will help establish our new standards, real standards based on respect and dignity." The corporate liaison handed Naomi a thick folder of papers, final authority documents transferring hotel leadership. As she signed each page, the room stayed quiet, watching history turn on sheets of paper. When she finished, Naomi looked up at the gathered staff. For a moment, no one moved. Then Grace started clapping. The sound spread, slow at first, then building, not the polite applause of obligation, but the deep, grateful sound of relief, of chains breaking, of air finally flowing free. Lillian stood straighter, shoulders back, tears still flowing, but with a smile that could light the room. Frank nodded slowly, his weathered face proud, and through the windows, the afternoon sun painted everything in gold, as if to say, "This is what grace looks like. This is how healing begins." 3 weeks later, the morning sun streamed through the hotel's towering windows, catching the crystal chandeliers and making them dance. But something else sparkled too, something warmer than mere luxury. A young bellhop held the revolving door for an elderly couple, greeting them by name. "Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Chen. How was your grandson's baseball game?" At the front desk, a new trainee practiced welcoming guests while Lillian Price stood nearby, her silver hair neat and her new navy blazer crisp. Her posture was different now, shoulders back, chin lifted, eyes bright with purpose. When Naomi Ellison walked through those same doors carrying her modest suitcase, wearing the same simple traveling outfit from that first day, several staff members noticed. But this time their attention held no judgment, no whispers, no sideways glances. Grace Weller hurried forward from the concierge desk, her face lighting up with genuine warmth. "Naomi, welcome home." The two women embraced like old friends, not like patron and employee. "The place feels different," Naomi said softly, looking around at the marble lobby where she'd once been made to feel so small. Lillian approached with 3 young staff members in tow. "These are our newest team members," she said proudly. "We're learning together." The confidence in her voice made Naomi's heart swell. "Show me what you've been teaching them," Naomi encouraged. One of the trainees, a young man barely 20, stepped forward. "Every guest deserves to feel seen and respected," he recited carefully. "We don't just serve people here, we see them." In the Magnolia Room, tables were set for the scholarship and veterans luncheon. Frank Malloy sat in the front row, his service pins gleaming on his jacket lapel. Other veterans and their families filled the chairs, some in wheelchairs, some with canes, all with dignity. The tension that had haunted the hotel for so long was absent, replaced by something gentler. Naomi took her place at the small podium, touching its wooden surface lightly. "3 weeks ago we started a journey together," she began. "Not just to change rules, but to change hearts. My grandmother used to tell me that faith isn't just about what we believe. It's about how we treat each other when no one's watching." She paused, her eyes moving across the familiar faces. "This hotel was always beautiful on the outside. Now it's becoming beautiful on the inside too. That's what happens when we choose to see each other as God sees us, with worth that no uniform, no wallet, and no appearance can measure." Frank nodded slowly, tears gathering in his eyes. Beside him, Grace reached over and squeezed his hand. After the luncheon, Naomi retreated to her office, the same room where Caroline had once plotted to maintain her power. On her desk lay a letter, the return address from a wellness center 2 states away. She opened it carefully. "Dear Ms. Ellison, I am writing not to excuse my actions, but to acknowledge the harm I caused. The program here is teaching me to face hard truths about prejudice and fear. My community service at a veterans shelter is showing me what real service means. I have a long way to go, but I'm learning." Naomi folded the letter gently. There would be time to respond later, with grace but without compromising the truth. In the late afternoon light, she walked through the lobby one more time. Lillian stood with another group of trainees near the front desk, her voice clear and steady. "Remember," Lillian was saying, "we see people here. Really see them. That's not just a policy. It's who we are now." Naomi felt that familiar grin return to her face, not the defensive one from that first day, but one of peaceful gratitude. This time, when she looked at her reflection in the polished marble floors, she saw exactly where she belonged. The lobby's beauty remained unchanged. The chandeliers still sparkled, the marble still gleamed. But now it felt warm, like coming home. The staff moved with easy confidence, their name, tags catching the light like tiny badges of honor. Where fear had once ruled, dignity now flowed as naturally as the soft music from the grand piano in the corner.